Hey Kyle, Mike Skeen here for Racers 360. Thank you for sending in your video. Looks like a really solid lap around Road Atlanta in your Camaro. Awesome cars, as you well know, very quick. Let's go ahead and dive right in, and we'll pick up a few spots for you to work on next time out. Obviously, a little bit of traffic here setting up the lap, but you handle it well, get back to power really well. You're a touch early coming down the hill here. I'm going to talk about it next time through since we're a little off from the traffic. In general, I would say you have a tendency to be a little on the early side with your turn-ins, which for me is actually better than late as long as you compensate through the corner and don't run out of track out. Most of the guys coming from the track day environments are turning too late and overslowing a lot on the entry. You turn in earlier, so you carry pretty good entry speed, but sometimes it's at the sacrifice of a little bit of mid-corner speed. So a few modifications around the lap will get you a little bit more, I think, out of that. Here at one in particular, you start to kind of crab in. Obviously, the track begins to turn a little bit before you really get to the turn-in point. This area over here is starting to inch in from where you were, and so you start to kind of head a little bit inside, and then you straighten up and almost turn out to the left and then turn in. What I want you to do is stay out a little bit wider and get out here. And so after this asphalt strip here ends, there's another bit of grass before the pit out on that side. And about halfway down that grass, roughly about here, is where you'll start to turn it in. So I want you to keep your arc out there with left side tires near that white line until you get to there. That way your turn in is a little bit more gradual, and you use a little bit more space out to the left. Right now you kind of, like I said, you drive in that straight line a little bit longer and then you turn sharp. And you can hear you're kind of on and off throttle a little bit before the apex, and your min speed stays, kind of 85, 86, and then drops to 84 for a split second right about the apex further down the track over here, and then you can get back to power. So we want to spend a little bit more of this time carrying speed in rather than, from roughly right here, because you have to turn a little bit sharper. You kind of maintain that kind of mid-high 80s, just below 90 until you get to the apex down here. And so by making that arc a little bit broader at the turn in, you'll be able to carry just a little bit more speed, even though it's slightly downhill to the apex. You'll be able to roll just a little bit more speed in and not sacrifice the exit. So let me clear off those drawings. We'll play it forward a little bit. So see here, that's, over here on the left is about where I want you to be all the way out left, near the grass with your left side tires and starting to arc in, but you're giving away kind of a half car length half car width or so on the way in. And you can see that 80, low 80s, I'll back it up a little bit, starts pretty early, and you kind of just maintain that, from about here, just below 90, you get to 88, and then you're at this 85, 87, pretty much all the way to the apex, dips to 84 for a split second, and then you start accelerating out. So we just want to get you a little bit more of that mid-corner speed back. You also might be able to track out just a little bit further left, but I do, in a heavier, high horsepower street car, I do tend to be a little bit further right of center maybe just to get back to power harder, but feel it out. Depending on how the car's handling, you might track out just left of center and then start back, but obviously you don't want to sacrifice too much going up to turn 2. So all this looks pretty good. Getting to the left pretty nicely, carrying good speed into the apex. I like everything to here. Then after this apex, you kind of tighten the radius a little bit to keep it more mid-track and kind of set up through 4. But because this is the tighter corner, I want to keep my minimum speed up as high as possible. So I straight line this as much as I can and let it track out further out, and then just hug the inside all the way around the left-hander. So let me inch it forward just a little bit. So as you come through here, you've got quite a bit of steering angle. You actually increase steering angle kind of as you land. It goes from, I think it was 57 or something to 75, and then you start to straighten it up. So rather than pinching it to keep it kind of right of center here, you're kind of staying this way and then doing more of a late apex on the left. I go ahead and track it out further over here and then just hold the left side, doesn't arc out, but I'll stay right on that curbing all the way around the left-hander. And so by the difference here, that lets me open the radius to turn 3 and keep the speed up. But by keeping it over right a little bit more, you're keeping the radius on 3 tighter. So you have to slow down 3 more, and you don't really have anywhere to take advantage of that, because you don't have much of a straightaway or anything following that. Whatever, you kind of sacrifice the apex here to get back to power, but then you have no place to use that power. So it's better to just kind of drive it like a Miata or some low power car where you're just trying to keep all the momentum up as long as you can through here. And then as we play it through here, like I said, I'll be a little bit earlier getting right to that curb and just hugging it all the way around. All this looks nice. I like that you're turning at the beginning of the curve there. I think probably a little bit smaller lift even maybe, because the car turns almost too quickly and you have to kind of open your radius a little bit. We can see if we play it through really slow, the steering angle change. Oops, that was too far back. So if we play it slowly, just watch the steering angle over here on the right. So as you go through center, you turn in, it goes to 30 something, 31, and then you have to actually straighten it up back towards like the high 20s just for a moment. And there's a couple of variations where you're kind of adding steering, then backing out, adding steering again. That should be a cue to you that you've turned in too early, or that the car is too responsive. And I don't think it's actually that you turned in too early, but because you lifted too much and overslowed, the car responds too quickly. So effectively, you turn in too early because the car is going to the apex too soon. And that's why you have to straighten it back up, wait, and then add steering later. So I think simply by rolling a little bit more speed through that turn in, not lifting quite as much, but using the same turn in point, maybe just slightly slower with the hand speed, not quite as quick to dart in, but just more progressive. The car should bring you down in line well. And basically your line will end up being all the same. You'll get right to the apex like that. Except you'll be hearing more speed. You won't pause quite as much at the top of the hill. Otherwise, all this looks good. Then once we get down here, I think you're making 5 a little bit too tight. So you clip the curve here, and then you see how you've got this straight portion, and then it kind of curves away at the end. And you kind of clip this first one, and then you just sort of beeline it towards the apex and turn really sharp in this general area for 5. What I do is I back the brake zone up just a little bit so that I keep my right side tires parallel to the straighter portion of the curb. And then right as it starts to turn away, I might give it a little jink to the right, but not really. Basically, right as it turns to the right, I start turning into the left. And then my minimum speed is earlier down the hill, but then I have this straight shot through the apex and I get to power much earlier. If you walk this track, you'll see how steep it really gets from right here all the way to the top of the hill. Even where we are in this brake zone, it's pretty steep, but it really starts to get there as you get towards the apex. And so you're slowing it down right at the bottom of that to make this really tight turn. Whereas I'm kind of rolling in speed a little bit more, I'm able to pick up throttle a lot sooner. And so let's clear all that. So here, I'll just play it through slow. You can see how your right side start to leave the curb earlier, and then you're getting over towards the lighter side of the track. And you can see how all this over here is not really like the really well-worn pavement. It's because you're a little bit too tight, too far left on the entry of this curb here. Shouldn't be really anywhere near the first couple stripes of this curb. You want to be coming at it a little bit more right, at least a half car width or so. That way your trajectory, once you get to the apex, is aimed up the hill a little bit more. So you can see how your car is pointing like this. I'd be coming from over here, and the car would be pointing up the hill a lot more already. And so because you're not making the turn quite as tight right in here, you're carrying a lot more speed, whereas you have to really slow it down, pinch it, and kind of point and shoot it a little bit more. And we just want to open that radius a little bit. And that way you'll be able to get full throttle commitment a little bit sooner there. Similar thing down here at 6, where you're just a little bit early turning in. Some of it might be overslowing some, but you're also starting to crab in just a little bit. That doesn't bother me quite as much as getting down towards the beginning of this curve a little too early. And so I think really just compressing the brake zone a little bit, rolling more entry speed, it shouldn't really feel like it's going to catch until you get to the corner where all this camber is, because I back it up a couple frames, you'll see that there's not really, you're at the beginning, there's a little bit of banking, but it really increases as you go in. So like right back here, there's just barely banking. But then once you get in towards the apex, it's pretty steep actually. So you want to roll it in fast enough that it doesn't really feel like it's going to catch very well. But then once you get to the apex, it really grabs. The big thing though is you don't want to be at the curb before the point that it tightens, kind of right in here. So after that second blue stripe, you see how it's a little bit tighter radius right along in there. I want to kind of pick up that curve right in there. So my arc will look something like that. You're coming at it a little bit too tight, and then you have to, again, turn really sharp there because you're a little on the early side. So again, a little bit wider, half car width or so on the entry so that you're not picking up the curve on these first 3 stripes. But your right side tire should pick it up right there after it kind of tightens the radius, and then you just hold that for a couple of links until you start to see through the exit of the corner a little better. And I think, your exit looks really good. You compensate and you get it back online, but, you have to slow it down a little bit to do that tighter radius, and you're kind of getting a little bit of the curve there. And then this looks pretty good, but same sort of tendency. You're just maybe a few feet too early because you have to wait quite a while before you really commit to power. Right there is where we first see 100% throttle. And so you're doing too much of the steering after the apex. You really want to be a little bit later, especially on turn 7, because obviously the big focus here is to get to power early because you have this long straightaway. So you want every mile an hour onto the straight that you can. So just a little bit later on the turn in would be good so that we can straighten up a little bit sooner. And if we watch your steering angle, you see it, you've got 50, 60, 70 degrees of steering input, get through the apex, and then you're actually at 80 or 100 and 90s, and then not really to straight until you're, again, nearly to the exit. So we want to do kind of the opposite, where you want to be a little bit later on the turn in, but then, like 80, 90, 100 degree steering angle here before the apex. And then as soon as you get to this, you want to be starting to unwind. It should be going the other direction where it starts counting down. And you get to more straight so you can start to commit to full power somewhere around in here, actually. You should have maybe 50, 60 degrees of steering angle or less, 30, and quickly tapering off so that you can quickly be going to full throttle a little bit sooner here. Again, really small modification. I'm not talking about going, way drastically different. We just want to kind of shift the focus there to where the primary goal is exit speed. Then down here at 10, looks like the braking looks really nice. I think I remember you getting pretty high up here on the brake pressure. Yeah, so sometimes I would see a little bit higher on these, the GM, PDM stuff, or PDR. You usually can get into at least kind of fill in this 4th square. Some guys will even dip into the 5th one a little bit. So the peak there, the brake pressure that you're getting, I would say is maybe just top of the 3rd and barely into the 4th. So, and we also want to make sure we're seeing that pretty early in the brake zone, because at triple digit speeds, you're less likely to get that ABS engagement. So you want to have really hard initial pressure where you have more aero, more momentum behind the car pushing it forward. Use the brake really hard, and then it should kind of taper off a little bit as you go nearer to the corner. And that portion of it, I would say you're doing pretty well. The turn in here looks pretty nice. I would say just a few more degrees of steering angle right at the apex here in order to get the car a little bit more left and set up 10B better. So as it is, you kind of come through here and you track out a little right of center, or at least center, and then it makes the 10B a little tighter. I want just a few more degrees of steering angle here to be, just left of center maybe, and then that straight lines our exit a bit better. So much like turn 7, you want to focus on the exit up the hill, get back to power really early. And so we want to be doing more of the steering in the first half of the corner so that we're giving back steering on the way out. And if we watch your steering angle, you're still going to have quite a bit going past the apex, and that delay is going to throttle. So just a small modification. Again, maybe car width are so different here, but the halfway point between A and B. That way we focus a little bit more on the exit of B. I'll just kind of inch it through here. So the line's maybe not as drastic as what I was drawing, but still the same effect, where you come through here and you can see your steering angle is increasing, and then 80s, 90s degrees past, even after you're going past the apex. I don't know why my video froze there, but the idea is that we want the steering angle to be going back towards straight more quickly so that we can get full throttle a lot sooner here. You can also see when you're going to throttle, you're getting traction control engagement, which is not necessarily a problem, but we see it quite a bit here especially. And so part of that is because you still have so much steering angle when you're trying to go to power, it's really struggling to feed that throttle in. So the fix for it is back here, being just a little bit further left. Again, half car width, something like that. But the focus is to get the steering really done. So maybe a little bit more steering right here, right as you get to the apex, so that you can start giving back steering as soon as you go past that apex curve. You want to be going towards straight and feeding full throttle. And then as we go up over the hill, all this looks pretty nice. Get it all the way over left. And so I would say you're just a little bit on the early side here as well. And the big problem with that is that you put yourself more on the off camber downhill portion. So we want the car to be turning more as it hits the kind of compression area at the bottom. And we don't want it to be as late. So if you stay out left here a little bit longer, you end up getting a little bit, it's not flat, but it gets a little bit better, a little bit more in your advantage than if you wait. So if you're further inside here, you end up staying on that off camber portion longer till about the end of the patch there. Whereas if you're just a little bit further out, it starts to flatten, a little bit more in here. And so the car starts to bite a little bit more. So left side tire should be at least towards the, that outer portion of this patch. And then your eyes should start to look down here further. But the idea is we want to stay a little bit closer to the grass after the curbing ends, so that you're getting the car onto this area where it starts to flatten a little bit better. The car will get a little bit more grip, and you're, again, a little bit later apex, so that you're more straight as you come to the apex curve. Again, your angle of approach will be just slightly different, not much, but it'll help you get to power just, a little bit sooner, which is all that we're looking for. So again, really good speed through here. I think you'll just be able to commit to throttle a little bit sooner, as we can see you hovering at that half throttle area for quite a while there, and then full throttle almost to track out. And so we wanted that full throttle point to be a little bit nearer to the apex. And again, I'm just going to back up, look at that turn in point again. So as it is, you're turning roughly the end of the curbing here. Whereas we want you to go just a little bit down past that. So past this little bend here in the white line, just down here, a little bit further out, and that'll help the car really turn. And again, that way you'll be coming towards this apex rather than in really tight here. You'll be coming from a little bit out here, looking straight through the exit a little bit more. So really small change. But I think that'll get you several mile an hour onto that front straightaway. And in general, everything looks really good. Like I said, I like, to be working on guys that are carrying speed and turning in early. It's easier, I think, to tweak that than to kind of backtrack a lot on the guys that are doing a lot of late turn-ins and really overslowing the entries. I think you're doing a nice job in most cases of carrying good entry speed, but there's just a little bit more there. And if we fix it a little bit to where you're a little bit more on the late side, then you don't sacrifice the mid-corner speed as much. So you kind of get best of both worlds. But really solid stuff. Let us know how that goes next time out. Hope you have a great time. Thanks.